Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. Well, I've been thinking about how we talk about emotion is information, but there's a lot more to it than that because emotions are pretty obvious. The information you get, what matters is what you do about your emotions and how you, so I don't like to call it regulate, but how you work with your emotions rather than work in spite of your emotions. So it's more than just emotions are information. They're not going to go away. So you got to do something with that information. I mean, they eventually go away, but if you just push ahead in spite of your emotion, you're not going to be regulating very well. It'll just wear you out because they won't really go away until you address them, until
Right.
you do something with them.
That's so true. And that's the cycle, we push through because we're survivors and we push through and then we don't ever get relief. And what I'm finding is when we're in that state all the time, it's hard to get into our creative place where that's when who we really are shows up. But when we're constantly fighting rather than embracing the
Yeah,
emotions
yeah,
or putting off what we know we need to do. For instance, I told you last year I tried to sign up for counseling and it was a disaster. And the
yeah.
lady's like, I'm leaving, so you shouldn't even bother. And it was like a really bad experience. And I've sort of put it off. And I realized because of an emotion that came up on my trip that I needed to get back into counseling.
Oh,
And so I made the appointment.
wow.
And yeah, I realized in taking rest and relaxation, I recognized I'm really angry. I'm still really angry. I thought I worked through all of that anger,
Mm.
but I found myself angry at someone famous that I don't know. And I was like, if I'm angry at someone famous that I don't know, what is that about? And again, when I tried to process it, which I know I need counseling to work through it. So I'm not trying to do it on my own. But what I recognized is that it was that what we missed out on because for me, what I missed out on because of my abuse. I didn't get
Hmm.
the good start a lot of people get when they have good families or, don't have childhood trauma. And so there was a lot of that in relation to my business that I do and feeling like the setbacks were too much and it was too unfair. And it sounds really awful and pathetic. But again, those emotions,
Yeah.
I had to embrace them and just say, man, you're really mad. What's that about?
Hmm.
And be with them. And I
And
didn't
it
like it very well.
no, but and it feels like to me you got down towards the root emotion, which almost feels like grief to me. Grief
I,
over what was
mhm.
lost.
Yeah,
But you don't get to that unless you actually explore the emotions you're feeling right in the moment, which was the anger. And then that led
exactly.
you deeper towards why you were feeling anger. And that's why I'm focused on this, is because, yes, the emotions are information, but what you do with that information is an important part because that's how you regulate. So you're not, it's one thing to recognize you're having grief or you're having anger and then just pushing through it. It's another thing to recognize it and explore it. And that sometimes does take a pause or,
Mhm.
a moment to wonder why you're having these emotions, where they're coming from, spending some time, and that's not always possible in the moment, but it's important to acknowledge maybe in the moment, okay, I need to look at this. I recognize that I'm having this emotion, and I really feel like this is something that's going to be there for a while. So I need to pay attention to this, and maybe I'll spend time when I get home or something
Yeah.
and
Because if we
absorb
don't,
us.
it holds us hostage.
Yeah, it does. It makes it hard to regulate your functions.
Mhm.
Because you're distracted, you have this thing hanging over you. It affects like the rest of your emotions coming through, so you can't be spontaneous or
Right.
you can't and so it's like this cloud hanging over you.
Mhm.
It could be grief, it could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be all these things, but the information part is important if you pay attention to it and dig into it and look at it and
Mhm.
recognize it and acknowledge it somehow
Well,
and not just push through it. Or if you have to kind of push through it at the time, at least acknowledge you want to explore where this is coming from and what it's about.
well, and I think what really came to light for me was these things that are hidden from our abuse that we haven't dealt with, or maybe we've dealt on, but they're circular, how we've talked about that. They come up in a
Yeah.
different way, is that it doesn't just affect me. So
Yeah.
alcoholics, drug addicts, they go, well, it's only hurting me. But no,
Mm-hmm.
it's hurting everyone. And so we don't see that those things around us are actually hurting the people around us. And so for me to stay in that place of anger, here I am in this wonderful atmosphere, having this wonderful time. And had I not acknowledged it at least and said, boy, I think I need some help, I would have suppressed it and I would have reacted angrily to things like if something didn't go right or whatever, because that's what happens when we just push it back down. We're reacting to it, and the people around us, we may not be mad at them, but they feel the anger, so it's affecting them, or the sadness. And I think that's kind of what I always want people to understand. When we don't get help, when we don't get counseling, when we don't deal with our stuff, it's not just hurting us,
Yeah.
it's hurting the people we love.
Uh-huh.
But we think by suppressing it, we're just like, we'll just get on with it. It's not hurting anyone but me, and I don't matter. So,
Yeah. And I think with emotions, you're not actually suppressing it. You're just getting on in spite of it because the
yeah.
emotions don't really go away if you just ignore them. What they do is they linger and affect
Mhm.
the rest of your judgment, the rest of what you do. So that's
Uh-huh.
why it's important to stop and look at your emotion and have that moment where you think, well, what am I doing with this emotion? What is it here for? How am I gonna let it regulate what I'm doing or not regulate what I'm doing?
Mhm.
But that acknowledgement and that kind of examination of it before, so there's like this moment where before, after you have the emotion where you're examining it, you have this moment that gives you a chance to recognize it. And then I think having that recognition is important, but what's important is the time you spend acknowledging it, acknowledging where it comes from, what it's about. Like you were talking about, you had this anger and then you recognized it was the sorrow over what you hadn't had, what you missed out on, what was taken away from you. And that's a really common grief for survivors. I know a lot of what I get down to in my emotions is often grief. And
Mhm.
there's like sadness, there's feeling of missing out or being lonely. And it kind of gets down to that grief of having lost something, having lost that part of my childhood.
Mhm.
And when you recognize that, you can allow yourself to go, okay, I understand where this is, why I'm having this, and it's going to be okay. I know I lost that part of my childhood, but that doesn't have to change how I am right now.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to affect how I'm going to spend the rest of my vacation, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. But also being willing to recognize
Hmm.
when there's more to it. Like sometimes things will come up and I can talk myself through it, but then sometimes things come up and it's very clear that if I don't do something about it and get help, it's going to resurface and it's just going to cause me all kinds of grief. So why not get it out, get the help, get past it,
Yeah.
and move to a better place of freedom and be able to tap into those things I really do love in my creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the important signs of having a dysregulation, you might say, is recognizing that you're irritable a lot or you're crabby or cranky or you can't focus very well, or you're not paying attention to other people very much, you're not giving them the attention they deserve. You know, if you notice these changes in your behaviors, maybe it's because there's this lingering emotion that you've been trying to get on in spite of, and maybe it's
Mhm.
time to look at that and where it's coming from.
Yeah. Well, and what is the saying we hear with depression? Depression is anger turned inward.
Hmm.
And although I don't act angry, there's still my inner response
Yeah.
comes from that place. So then when it comes out in a way like that, it's like, oh, I guess it is there. I guess I'm not hiding it very well.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of the time when we try to get by in spite of,
Yeah.
what happens is it only kind of escalates because of our behavior when we're just getting by
Hmm.
is also making our outlook even worse because we're not behaving well. So it just kind
Hmm.
of this escalation of, oh, I'm depressed, I feel lousy, I'm tired, and I don't want to do anything. And, you know, your attitude towards everything just kind of makes it even worse. And so it makes it harder to even look at where it's coming from because you're in such a bad state.
Right. It feels like if I can just get through this without dealing with it. And for me, what shows up is avoidance
Hmm.
and sometimes scrolling, doing things to get lost.
Yeah.
And I recognize that just facing it head on, even though it's not like I face it head on and it's done. I'm facing it, I'm looking at it, I'm understanding it, I'm calling for a counselor, I'm looking at where it's showing up in my life. I'm doing the work around it. It's not going to go away tomorrow. And
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing that's hard is I would just like to be past it. I'd like, okay, I figured it out. Let's go. Let's move on. But there's some work. There's some work and grieving to be done. And when we do it in community, we're going to have more success.
Yeah. And that's why it was important to me to talk about emotion as information because a lot of times we get the information, but we don't do anything with it. And
Right.
that's what happens when we do that is all of a sudden we recognize that we had this emotion, but you just push on in spite of it. And that's easy to do. But if you see the signs of not being well regulated, then maybe it's time to go beyond just, okay, I know I'm angry. What am I going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. And, it's pretty much what do you call it? Like a reflex to just keep going. Like that's how we
Hmm.
survived. And so to recognize it and then stop ourselves is really huge. And
Hmm.
then to say, maybe I can't, like you said, maybe I can't do anything right now, but this definitely is something, and I'm valuable enough to work on it. I'm
Uh-huh.
valuable enough to get help. And
Yeah. I think that's a big deal for survivors is we don't pay attention to our emotions because we basically were taught to ignore them, to
yeah.
suppress them, to not do anything about them because we weren't allowed to do or it wouldn't have mattered.
Mhm.
We couldn't try to do anything about them.
Yeah. Well, nobody was listening.
Yeah.
And so it's easy in our infant brain to go, well, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to listen, but to go, wait, there is help. Wait, there is support. Wait, there is a community
Hmm.
where we can heal and grow. And I feel like that is when we can lean into that, as hard as it may be, that is really where we get the support and more of that, where other people go, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. So where do you go when you want to get help with your emotions as far as, okay, let's say you're recognizing it's this deep-seated thing that you haven't addressed. What next?
I mean, we've explored so many things. There's trauma coaches. You definitely want to go to someone who understands trauma, whether
Yeah.
it's a coach, a counselor, a group, because otherwise you're going to end up more hurt because people that don't understand trauma reblame the victim.
Yeah. There's all those miscommunications about trauma or beliefs about trauma that people have
Hmm.
that are actually more harmful. All the stigma. And so, counselors are just people too, so they don't always know that much about it.
Well, some have been more trained in it, and now you can find it when you're looking.
Yeah.
They'll say trauma informed And I think that that's what's important because if you're going for a divorce and you're just going for a divorce and you maybe don't have trauma, that's a different kind of counseling. When I was in a really dangerous marriage, I went to a counselor who had been through this thing. She understood narcissism. She understood all that, but guess what? She didn't understand childhood trauma. So when at one point something about my trauma came out, she couldn't handle it.
Mm,
And in my brain, I went, see, no one understands. Go back to just what she knows. That's the situation I'm in that I've got to get out of, and we'll focus on that. So again, she never came to me as a trauma counselor. She came to me as someone to help you get out of domestic violence, which is trauma, but there's a different aspect.
yeah.
And I think just really doing our research, like when I wanted to find someone with EBT this time, because that seems to be, we've looked at that, we've looked at family systems, we've looked at all these. And so when we find someone that can do the thing that we think will work for us, I think is a bonus of knowing what we think we need.
Yeah. And the good thing is now there's so many more options.
Yeah.
I think also you can lean on friends and family with your emotional feelings that you need to express in some way. It's also okay to talk with friends or family or people in church, just understanding they might be limited in how much they can help you, but not necessarily doing it for help, but it's a way of recognizing it and acknowledging it,
So you're
talking
braver than
about.
me because I've had too many bad experiences at church trying to explain and then being told to pray about it or being told, not being listened to and understood. And I don't want to shine a negative light on church, but there were many times when I went in very innocent and sweet to ask for prayer and I got shamed for what I tried to explain. So
Mhm.
I think that's why when we go to counseling, we get tools on how to talk to people,
Yeah.
like the whole, when this happens, I feel this way. So it's not like, well, every time you do this, it's like, no, so there was a situation with my sister where I said, when this happens, I feel judged. And she goes, well, I'm not judging you. I said, yes, I do know that, but I'm just telling you, I feel judged. I'm working
Hmm.
on that. And so, but we're close enough that I could say that.
Yeah.
But I think for me, my biggest thing is to shut down, and part of it, like I heard this lady say, her and her friend, partner, work partner. So one of them had a mom who, she knew if she pushed back on her mom would just shut down. So she could kind of almost bully her mom. But then
Mm.
the other one, the mom was violent. And so she said, I'm having this trouble. The mom violence would happen. And so here they are now in this business relationship. And one's wanting to push on the one who's scared of violence. And the
Mm.
one scared of violence is not saying anything because she's afraid she's going to be pushed on. So, it's like all those dynamics. But when we understand where we're actually coming from by counseling, we get the tools, then we can better communicate. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying don't go talk to friends, but I'm just saying sometimes, many times for me, I mean, when I talked to your wife the first time, I was so scared and I was so grateful that she heard me because so many times I had tried. I remember trying to tell my youth leader something was happening in my home, and I was chastised and told to pray for that person that was
Mhm.
abusing me. So, you know what I mean? And I think we've
Yeah.
come a long way, but also I want people to go to a very safe place first.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, go somewhere really safe until you're brave enough or you have enough thicker skin that if you get reblamed, you'll be like, hey, that's about them, not me.
Yeah. And that's the caveat, is just recognizing, acknowledging that if you do share with some people who aren't necessarily professionally trained and know what your trauma is and how to,
Mhm,
that they might not respond in a way you're expecting or is
mhm,
really helpful. But I think it's also helpful to share about your feelings in that at least you're recognizing them. And that's where that moment comes in. If you're having this emotion before you decide to do anything about it, think about, recognize it, look at where it's coming from. Having this time to decide what to do about it is helpful.
mhm,
And you can decide, well, this person might not understand it really in the way that is going to be helpful, so I could probably wait on sharing this with this person. But giving it that pause before you respond to your emotion, I think, is the
mhm.
the important thing.
Yeah. Well, when you think about like anger, if for me recognizing I have anger, it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything angry. I just recognized, why am I mad at this person? And then recognizing that, okay, I'm not going to go hurt myself or hurt anyone with the anger, but
Hmm.
the anger is very unhealthy.
Yeah.
So people that are angry and react angry, they're at least they're reacting and they have an outlet. But those people that just suppress all their anger and become depressed, that maybe don't even realize. And I think that was it. I didn't even realize the level of what I felt like I had missed.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the information is so important. Emotions are information
Yeah.
if we pay attention to them, if we look into them, if we dig into that
Mhm.
information. And that,
I would even say embrace it, you know, because our tendency is to turn the other way, go, it'll go away, we'll get past this, but to just look at it and embrace it.
yeah,
Man, I'm really angry. Man, I'm really sad, you know, and just acknowledge it, embrace it. And
yeah.
that's scary, but
Oh, it is. But what matters is where the emotion's coming from and why
but
you're.
because it's our body trying to tell us something.
Yeah, and that's why the information is important, but it's only important if we pay attention to it and use it in a way
Mhm.
that's helpful and acknowledge it and pay attention to it, learn where it's coming from. But that's not easy in the moment. I think that's why having that moment of waiting or thinking about the emotion, that
Mhm.
that step of before you do anything,
Mhm.
taking a minute to look at it, and that's helpful in that it does help you decide how to respond to your emotion. And also, maybe this is the time to dig into it, or maybe I'm going to wait a little while and then I want to reflect back on this, but I want to remember it.
Mhm.
Those are the things to kind of think
Yeah.
about in the moment.
Journaling is always good for that, getting it out of your head at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
And
that's scientific. When we actually speak it or journal it, it gets out of our head and then it has a way to sort of make sense. And like for me, I'm alone a lot. I'm not lonely. I live alone. And then sometimes when you live with someone, you get up, you have coffee, you talk about these things. But when for me, live alone, I get up, I have coffee, and I think about these things. So they don't come out of my mouth. But once they come out of my mouth or writing, then all
yeah.
of a sudden I can start to make some sense of it.
Yeah, yeah, and you can even talk about it when you're writing it down, and
Mhm,
that helps too. And it kind of tells you what you want to write about. Sometimes I've
mhm.
done that when I'm journaling, is I start
Yeah.
talking about first and
Mhm,
talking about what I'm thinking or feeling or what's going on, and then start writing down what I talked about. But yeah, I think that's the key thing here as far as emotions are information. Well, what do you do with that information, and how do you get to that real information, like the get to it?
mhm,
The deep information that's there is by exploring it. And how do you explore it if you're all alone? Well, yeah, talking about it to yourself and writing it down is good. If you're with someone that you feel comfortable with, sharing
mhm,
with them. If you need more than just writing it down and journaling, or if you feel like there's something that needs to be explored, maybe if you don't have a counselor, find a counselor.
mhm,
If you don't have a counselor available, maybe find a group, the many groups that are available for trauma survivors,
mhm.
and finding someone you can share with that isn't going to be judgmental. That's kind of the
Right.
primary thing.
And now there are these online BetterHelp and different programs that make it a little easier to get into counseling too, that you can do for a time. Like you don't have to go, I'm going to go to counseling and I have to go for the rest of my life. Like you can go for a few sessions if you need and regroup. I think it sometimes counseling feels like a curse. I remember when I had to go on to antidepressants and I was so mad. I was so mad.
Hmm.
How come my mom's mentally ill and I'm the one that has to go on medication? And so I think sometimes getting, I don't know, maybe not, but sometimes getting help feels like you're locking into a lifetime of this rather than, hey, look, I can try a coach this time, a counselor next time, a group the next time, get on the podcast next time. Like, what about just finding different ways and figuring out what really works? you
Yeah.
know, for us. Because a lot of times people say, people have said this to me all the time, you need to see a counselor. It's like they don't say, well, have you thought about maybe a trauma coach? Or, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
people just want to fix you, they want you to be well. But we have a choice in what we want to do. And I feel like it's better to, when things come up, like you say, when these emotions come up and say, hey, I'm trying to get your attention. This is making you sick, even though you don't know it, that then we find a way that we can get support for whatever length of time we need it.
Yeah. So the reason we say emotions are information doesn't mean ignore that
Yeah.
information or just get by in spite of the
Yeah.
information.
Not like, okay, got it, moving on.
Yeah. Okay, I'm angry. I'm pissed off. This will go away. I'm just
Yeah.
going to push through it. No,
Or so
and
what?
you
You know what
know,
I mean?
just
I'm angry. So
recognizing
what?
it isn't necessarily enough.
Right.
It's more than it's what the valuable thing is what you do with that information and how that helps you regulate how you react to your emotion or don't react or don't even do anything about.
Yeah. Well, and then say you're my age, 67, and you go, I'm still really angry. That's embarrassing. Like, I don't want to tell my colleagues I'm really mad.
Uh,
So there's that element too. And that is what makes us want to go, oh, get past this, you know.
yeah.
But it's not about shame. It's really courageous. It's really courageous to recognize it and then go, you know what? I'm going to do something about it because the better I get, the better it is for everyone around me.
Yeah, so don't just ignore that information. Do
Yeah.
something with it. Think about what it is and where it's
Kind of like
coming
the
from.
check engine light, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
don't deal with it, one day it's not going to start.
Yeah, exactly. So when that emotion's there,
Mhm.
there's a reason for that, and it's can be very important reason for that. And
Mhm.
so it's important to pay attention to it and look into it.
Mhm.
But that's the thing. It's not just recognizing your emotion. That
Mhm.
doesn't help that much. It is
Right.
helpful at first, but recognizing it and then,
Taking action.
what is the thing you want to do about it? What is the thing you want to recognize?
Yeah. Sometimes it's as much as just making an apology. Sometimes it's getting help. Like, but whatever it is, taking the time to recognize it and like you say, and then look at what actions go
Yeah.
around it. And also not feeling like it's new, like it's so circular. Like, wait a minute, I thought I already dealt with that. It's like, yeah, I have dealt with that a lot. I've gotten rid of a lot of anger, but guess what? There's still a little bit left. And it's focused on somebody famous I don't even know. So, you know, what's that all about?
Yeah, and sometimes just some little gesture might be enough. Like if you're feeling grief, doing something for yourself, buying
Mhm.
yourself flowers or, or there's just, you could express it in ways that just recognize it and you can then you can handle it easier than if you're just not expressing it in any way.
Well, and we've talked about that inner child, and I think that that's what's at play is there's that inner child who's
Hmm.
angry, right? They're the ones with the residual anger.
Yeah.
And so being able to say to them, I see you, I hear you, and I'm willing to take a look at this and do something about it. So you're giving them relief. You're saying, okay, all right, I get it. You can stop having your tantrum. I realize this is big and I will work on it. You go be a kid. Like the adult is going to take charge, do what needs to be done and handle it.
Yeah, and then follow through,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then actually do pay attention to it. So I think I have always felt that that expression, emotions are information, is important, but I think there's a lot more to it. And so I want to, whenever we talk about that,
Mhm.
it's not just that.
It's like in coaching, we always say, okay, now what are your action steps?
Hmm.
Now that you know this, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and that's the big question
Yeah.
when you're
So
having
it's stages like
yeah.
recognize one, two, take action, three. What's three?
Well, I think there's
Repeat.
recognizing and then acknowledging. You have to,
Mhm.
I think that's the important step is acknowledging
Mm.
the emotion, and then preparing to either dive into it or recognizing it and saying that you're going to spend time with that emotion when you can in a better time, and not just dismissing it.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of, and that's why I say, are you going to work with your emotions or work in spite of them? I think
Mm.
when we do it and dismiss it, then they don't necessarily go away. And
Yeah.
sometimes they can compound. So,
Yeah. So, for instance, when we talk about dismissing, so on this trip, everything was so wonderful. There's nothing to complain about. However, we got on the boat very early, like 10:30, and when our luggage showed up, mine didn't. And so I talked to the room steward, I talked to the information desk, and this is what they said: "Don't worry, it'll show up."
mm,
Okay. So it's kind of brushing off, but I'm like, okay, they do this. So now we're leaving at 7. It's 6:30. We got on the boat at 10:30 and I still don't have luggage. And
oh,
so what's screaming in me is nobody's listening to me. They're going,
yeah,
"Don't worry, don't worry." And I'm trying to tell them my luggage should be here. I was one of the first ones on. And so finally I went to the steward, and normally I wouldn't do this because I wouldn't stand up for myself. And I said, "Listen, I appreciate that you said you're looking around," because he did go look in one of the couple of the rooms. I said, "But we were on the boat at 10:30. And if my luggage isn't here, something's wrong."
yeah.
And he said, "Oh, it's still not here." Okay. And guess what? It was out on the pier.
Oh, you're
And he called out
kidding.
there and somebody brought it on the boat. Now, had I just kept letting them brush me off
Yeah,
and not express, "Hey, wait a minute, this emotion is something's really wrong here."
yeah,
And I wasn't overreacting. I was being very kind and calm. But again, it's that feeling when we're feeling brushed off, like, yeah, no big deal. And then finding the way with the emotion to do it in a way that stands up for us, even though we feel like people don't care. And I think that's often why I don't speak up, is I just pre-assume that they don't care.
yeah.
And so there is so many facets to it. And when I was really proud of myself because that was new for me,
Mm,
to go, "Wait a minute, hello, I'd like you to hear what I'm actually saying.
yeah,
Could you take 1 minute? Am I too much of a burden, or can you take 1 minute and hear what I'm trying to tell you? Something's wrong."
yeah.
Yeah.
And you only did that because you recognized your emotion that something really feels wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't let that just go away or
Right. Just,
go
okay,
past
well,
it. You
yeah.
you recognized it and said, "This is important."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, emotion. I remember when we first talked about emotions being information, and it's like, yeah, but it's more than information.
yeah. Well, and it's more important than that. I mean, the information is the important part.
Hmm.
What you do with that information and how you handle it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I thank you for all your blessings. And I pray that for anyone listening, that you would bless them with courage to explore their emotions in a safe way and explore them with you. Lord, I just pray that you would be there when they're frustrated or angry or, their emotions, that you would accept their emotions and that they would be able to express them to you. And I pray that they would find your grace there in handling our emotions, because there's a reason we're having these emotions. And I feel that being able to express them and have them understood is a huge step in just knowing how to manage our emotions and how to work with them. And Lord, I just pray you would give them the courage to share their emotions in a way that's safe and that is helping them. Lord, I just pray for anyone listening that if they have had those times where they're irritable or feeling just down on themselves or feeling like they're in a fog, they don't understand why they can't get things done, or they're upset, that they'd be able to turn to someone and find someone they could share their emotions with, that helps them to get to that place of understanding and handling their emotions, that is a healthy thing rather than just dragging them down. And in your name I pray.
And Father, thank you for this great gift of emotions that can tell us where we need help and how to get ourselves on track. And that, Lord, I'm so grateful that there is healing, like that we don't have to just live with the things that and the thoughts that activate us and get us, keep us stuck and feeling so unworthy all the time. Lord, I thank you that you are a good God, and I thank you for these counselors that are trauma informed. And Lord, I pray that when we see we need help, that we would just be brave enough to say okay and get the help. And Lord, that we don't have to keep suffering. And I know sometimes survivors, we suffer, we have things that hurt, we don't deal with them, we have things that bother us, we don't deal with them because we just don't. It's a survivor thing. But help us to recognize we are worthy and we are worth being taken care of, we are worth being loved, and we are worth being heard. In your Son's holy name, amen.
Amen.